Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nick, and today we're going to be talking about roofs. So with Envisioneer, the catalog contains a wide variety of roof types, including hip, mansard, curved, and double slope. The roof is always inserted at a uniform plate height to match your building locations. Once you have inserted a roof, you can edit each of the supporting segments to create virtually any configuration. Some of the topics that we're going to cover today are going to be inserting a roof, converting a hip to a gable, adjusting the plate heights of your inserted roof, and then adding in some dormers. So the first thing we want to talk about is inserting a roof. So there are two main roof type tools in Envisioneer. There's the roof by perimeter tool and the roof by picking points tool. So when you use the roof by perimeter tool, a roof is automatically placed over the perimeter walls on a selected building location. The walls and the roof become a cohesive unit that move and interact together. So the first thing we're going to look at is inserting a roof using the roof by perimeter tool. So with our model that we have open here on our screen, I'm just going to switch to a 2D plan view. And we can see that we're on the ground floor right now. I actually want to be inserting a roof on the second floor, so I'm going to change my building locations to be on the second floor. And this will then switch me up to the second floor location where I'm able to insert a roof. To insert a roof, you can simply select the Roofs button and use the drop-down to select Roof by Perimeter, or you can go to Insert, Roofs, and select the Roof by Perimeter option. Either way, the catalog on the right-hand side will populate with all the different roof types that are available to you. Again, the catalog is completely modifiable, so if there is a roof type or roof slope that you use regularly that is not in the catalog, you can add to the catalog and create it. We're just going to simply select the 1012 slope. I'm going to bring my mouse into my drawing area. Once I have my mouse inside of the perimeter of the design, I will get a blue highlighted area that represents the area that a roof is going to be covering. So once I see that and it's enclosed and I see that blue square, I know that that roof is going to cover that portion of my drawing. So again, if my mouse is not inside a closed circuit, I will see nothing and no roof will be inserted. As soon as I move my mouse inside, I know that I have a selected area and I can simply left click on my mouse to insert that roof. A roof will always insert as a hip roof until you specify that you want to make adjustments to it. So for example, on this particular roof, we want to make sure that the left and the right side are a gable end. So to do that, I simply select the roof, select the edge that I want to modify. So I want to make sure that these two arrows are selected green because they're going to be the edges that I modify. I right click and it brings up my context menu, which will then allow me to go in and make adjustments. So here I actually want to go to the properties of this roof. And when I bring up the properties of the roof, I have a list of all the different features that are incorporated with the roof that I can adjust. So under the basic tab, I can see that I'm using a 1012 slope. It has a roof thickness of 6 inches. I can see that my overhang, which will be all the way around this roof, is set to be 1'4" or 16 inches. I have my overhang drop and my fascia distance. And if any of these terminologies are different than what you use, you can actually click on it and it will show you highlighted in the little diagram on the left of what we're actually referring to here. So our overhang drop here of almost 1'6" is being displayed here from the top of the wall to where the overhang meets on that wall. Our main concern right now is going to be changing the roof shape. So again, like I said, we want to be making this a gable end. So to do that, I simply select the roof shape. This will bring up the roof shape dialog. And now I'm going to change the roof shape from a hip to a gable. Or if I wanted to do a different style of roof, I can choose any one of these options. Double slope roof is used primarily if you're going to have two slopes that kind of die into each other. So for example, like a 1012 slope with a 412 covered roof, or sorry, covered patio, then you would have the double slope option here. We also have a custom option, which will just allow you to actually add in multiple segments. So by default, this one would be 2 segments. This one would be 1, 2, 3 segments. So you could add in multiple segments to create a custom roof. Again, like I said, we just want to do a gable, so we're going to select the gable option. You're going to see that the catalog or the properties page now adjusts to accommodate that new gable end. And you can see a lot of information was actually removed. Since I've turned this into a gable, it's basically going to take this ridge line and it's going to drag it across. So I no longer need to worry about the slope, because the slope is going to be determined by the top and bottom surfaces here. So that's why the slope option disappears. We can still adjust the overhang, and under our support and details tab, we can also control how our gable end is going to look. So if we're working with a rafter or with a truss, we're going to see different options available to us in here. And I select the rafter, and we'll leave that at 8 foot for now. I can also set up my gable type to be plain or squared, and I can give it a distance of, let's say, 6 inches. So that way it creates a squared cap on the end of my gable end, so that way I'm not seeing inside my eave. I'm going to go back to the basic tab, and another option we want to focus on is the display gable option. So right now it's set to none, and it's set to none because our walls will automatically extend to the roof on that location. So with my walls here, I have this set up already so that that wall will automatically extend all the way up into my gable end, so it fills that in. If, however, I don't want to do a balloon frame type of style, or I know that my gable end is going to have a different material used in it, then I would use one of the other two options in here, which would be by just selecting the none, we have a surface and a wall. The surface option would be used if you're going to have like a truss at the end there, and you're just going to cover that or clad that with the surface. Then you can select the surface option. And when you select the surface option, it'll apply a surface over that area. And then under the appearance tab, where it shows gable end, you can adjust the material that that surface will be using. Or if we go back to the basic tab and we select the wall option, this will now allow you to specify an actual wall. So if you're using a rafter frame and you want to actually frame this up with an actual wall, then you would use the wall option. And then you can actually select a different type of wall to create a different look. So now your gable end wall will be a different material than your wall below. We're just going to leave our walls as they are. So I'm going to hit cancel here. I'm going to go back to none. So I'm just going to use my balloon frame. It's going to frame that for me. And I'm going to click OK. So now you can see that we've created a gable end on either side. And if we look at this in a quick 3D view, I'm just going to change this to my 3D perspective. And I'm just going to grab my camera and pull it out to the back and off to the side here so we can see how that's going to look. So you can see that we have our gable end. Our wall is automatically filling in right to the top of that gable roof. And we have our squared edges on our gable ends. We actually want to create this as more of a Cape Cod style roof. So by that, what I mean by that is I'm actually going to take this edge, I'm going to drop it down so that it creates a dropped portion of our roof. I'm going to go back into 2D. I'm going to select this back edge, and I'm only going to select the back edge because this is the only edge that I want to modify. So with that arrow selected, I'm again going to right click, and I'm going to select properties. And we're not going to make any adjustments here. We're going to leave all of this the same. But what I do want to do is I want to go to support and details. I'm going to change my support heights for this portion of the roof only. So right now it's at the same height as the rest of the roof, but I want to drop this down to be 1 foot. So I type in that 1 foot option, and this will now bring that roof down and sit it on top of type of like a knee wall. So we're getting a slope in our roof here. And as soon as I do that, and I say OK, we can see that it drops that edge down and it pushes my ridge up higher. So when I look at this in our 3D view, we can see what it's actually done. So it's kept this portion of the roof exactly where I want it at the 8 foot mark, but I've lowered this portion down to be 1 foot to 6 on this wall area here. I'm going to go back to 2D. And the next thing I want to talk about is adding in dormer roofs. So dormers give you the ability to place walls and roofs at the same time on top of a roof that you've already created. And you can do this by simply just picking the points that you want, or what I like to do is I use the line tool to specify exactly where I want these dormers to go. So I want 3 dormers on this roof, and I want them to be spaced evenly. So I'm going to find the center of the wall first, and I can do that by typing in L on my keyboard to bring up the line tool. I'm going to move my mouse over the center line of this wall. I'm going to left click once. I'm going to bring my mouse down. It doesn't really matter how far down I bring this line, as long as I can see it and select it later. This line is just a representation of where I want this dormer to go. So I can just left click again to place in my line. And I'm going to right click and select finish. From here, I want to create 2 other lines to represent where I want the other 2 dormers to go. So here I'm going to select my line that I've already created, and I'm just going to right click and select offset. And then from this offset dialog, I'm going to type in 9 feet. And I only want to create 1 copy for right now. So basically what I'm telling this to do is I'm going to take the line that I've already drawn, I'm going to create an offset of it, and I'm going to move it 9 feet to the side that I specify, and I'm going to create just 1 of those lines. I'm going to say OK, and then I left click on the side that I want that line to go, and it will automatically move that 9 feet off to the side for me. I'm then going to right click and do that again. So I'm going to say offset, again, 9 feet. And again, we're going to leave it at 1, say OK. And this time I'm going to click to the right-hand side of the line, and it adds in a line to the right side. I'm going to hit escape to exit out of that selection. I'm going to type in L again, and I'm going to create a line that's going to represent the front part of where I want that gable, or where I want that dormer wall to go. So I have that line drawn in, and again, I always go out as far as possible, so that way it's easily selectable when I'm done using it. And then I can just say finish, and I can select that line, and I'm going to offset this one in 2 feet. I'm going to go right click, offset, 2 feet. Again, only 1 copy of it. Say OK, and left click to place it where I want it to go. So what this has done is it's given me actual intersections where I can add in my dormers. And to add in a dormer, what you can do is you can select the dormer tool. So again, you can use the drop down or insert roofs, dormer roof, and it's going to bring up the dormers dialog. And from here, we can specify the size of our dormer. So how wide do we want this dormer to be? We're going to leave this at 5 feet for now. We can also specify the dormer roof slope. So if I want this to be a different slope, I can just simply click on the dormer roof, and the catalog will open up and allow me to specify a different slope for that roof. I'm going to leave that at a 412. I'm going to say OK. We can also specify that we want this particular dormer to have a gable front. And you can do that by just leaving this option checked. If you want this to be a hip, then you can uncheck this, and we'll touch on that in a second. For this particular dormer, we want this to be a gable, so we're going to leave that checked. And then our dormer walls. Yes, you want to include a wall around our dormer, and it's going to ask you the type of wall you want to use. And when you hit the dormer wall button, the catalog access will open up for you, and you can actually specify the type of wall that you want to use. I'm going to select the 2x4 stucco wall. I'm going to say OK. You can also specify the height above the main roof. So again, referring to the diagram here, we can see how high do you want this wall to be off of your main roof. And again, 3 feet is going to be a good value for us. So I'm going to say 3 feet, and I'm just going to simply click OK. And now attached to my cursor is that dormer roof. And again, as you can see, I will not be able to insert anything until it's actually on top of the roof surface. I'm just going to left click to place in my first dormer. I'm going to right click and say finish. I'm going to add in 2 more dormers over here, but I'm going to use pretty much the same settings as the other one, but I'm going to turn off the gable front. And I'm going to make sure that I'm using a stucco roof. I'm going to say OK. And again, everything else is going to stay the same. I'm going to say OK. And I'm just going to zoom in here, and I'm going to left click and place this right there. I'm going to place another one right there. So I've added in some dormer roofs here. And we have a gable and then 2 hip edges. Let's say we want this one to actually be a shed roof. So what we can do here is I can select the edge of the roof that I want to modify. Just like we did with the gable ends, we're going to do the same thing for our for our shed roof, and we're going to select these 2 edges. I want to keep this one a hip because this is going to be my lowest point of my roof. So basically wherever I have a gutter, that's going to be where I want my shed roof to stay a hip. So the gutter would be here, so this edge is going to stay a hip. These 2 edges are going to be a gable. And anytime you insert a dormer roof like this, where it's intersecting with another roof, this edge is already converted to a gable. So you don't need to worry about this one. So this edge and this edge, we're going to have them selected. We're going to right click, and we go to the properties again. And we're going to change this from a hip to a gable. And then we can say, OK. And just by doing that, we've taken that dormer roof and we've converted it into a shed roof. And it's moved this back so it intersects with the main roof. And when we look at this in our 3D view, we can see the different styles of dormers. So we have a gable, a shed, and a hip dormer roof. One question we get quite frequently is, how do you add in windows into your dormers? Well, windows will insert right into the actual walls. It's just a matter of where you want these to be positioned in relation to the height of the location that you're on. So we're essentially adding this on the 2nd floor location already. So that 6'8" would be pretty close to what we need, but we are actually further back and down on this wall. So 6'8" might be a little bit too high. So I'm actually going to adjust this head height value to be 5'8". You always want to make sure you press the tab key out of the head height to make sure that it takes that dimension. You're then going to move your mouse over top of the wall where you want it to go, and then you can just simply right click and say center on wall. And it will place those windows at the 5'8" mark in those walls. And then when you say finish, and we look at that in our 3D view, we can see that those dormers now have windows in them. All right. We're going to go back into 2D. I'm going to quickly throw in a new camera so that we can see the inside of here. We get this question quite a bit too. Let's say that in this area, I actually want this wall to drop all the way down. So I want this to sit right on the floor here. Well, anytime you have a wall that's been drawn in, it's probably going to have the option of auto extend turned on. So under top and bottom, the auto extend option is more than likely going to be enabled. And this will auto extend the top and the bottom of the wall to the roof. So here we would just say, well, I want this wall to actually sit flush on the floor and flush at the eave of our roof. So I'm going to say level. I'm going to say I want that to be 6 feet. And we're going to say OK. And we can see that it now drops that wall down to create that wall from the eave of our roof down to our floor of our 2nd floor location. And then you could add in your walls that run underneath to create your knee wall, and then fill in the spaces where you need to. So if you want to add in another wall here, you could do that to create that alcove look of your dormer area. But that question we get quite frequently. And again, the wall will always, if it's turned on, will always extrude to the roof, top and bottom. So if you do want that to be flush, just turn that level option on and then adjust the height as needed. I'm going to go back into 2D. And that takes care of adding in a roof by perimeter and adjusting some of the variables there. The other option is using the roof by picking points tool, which allows you to freely pick the points between, to create the outline of the roof anywhere you want. So there is no interaction between the roof and the walls and anything underneath it. So you actually can pick the points wherever you want those to go. So to do that, we're going to move down to our ground floor, and we're going to add in a roof over our front porch here. And we're going to do that using the roof by picking points tool. So again, under Insert, Roofs by picking points, or under the Building tab, Roofs by picking points. Again, the catalog will populate with all the different roof options. We're going to select the 412 slope. I'm going to bring my mouse into my drawing area, and I'm actually just going to zoom in a bit, so I'm just working over top of my front porch. And I'm basically going to be creating a shed roof over this front porch. So I'm going to pick my first point. I'm going to left click once, move my mouse where I want this to go. Again, specify my second point. And I'm going to snap it right to the center of my wall. And I'm going to use my snap tracking option here. I'm just going to turn that on. So that way when I move my cursor up, I can see that this is exactly in line with that point there. And I do not need to go back to the first point. We are creating an enclosed polyline, so it knows that it refers back to that first point anyways. So I can just simply say right click and select finish. And it's created that roof for me. Now it's created it as a hip roof all the way around. And as we know, we want this to be a shed roof. So I need to make some adjustments here. So again, this is the edge that I want to keep. So I want to make sure that this stays a hip. This is going to be my lowest point of my shed roof. And I know that this is where my gutter is going to be. So that's how I know that this is the edge that I want to keep as a hip. However, the other three edges, I want to modify those. I'm going to make sure that this edge is unselected and these three arrows are selected. These are the three edges that we're going to modify. And unlike the dormer roof where it assumed the back was a gable already because it was tying into another roof, this one, as you can see, is not. It's actually showing it as a hip, and it's going to create if I look at this in a 3D view, it's going to create a water damming situation where the water can sit here and pool. So we definitely want to make sure that this is set to a gable as well. Again, select these three arrows, right click, properties, and then again, we're going to select the roof shape, and we're going to change it to be a gable and say OK. So now what we've done is we've taken that hip roof and we've converted it to be a shed. And what you're also going to see is the edge of that roof actually extends all the way into my design here. And I really don't want that to happen. I want that to actually terminate right at the wall. So I can select this roof edge again, and I can move this arrow so that it sits right up against the veneer of our house. So that's one step. The next thing we want to do is we also want to get rid of the overhang. So that way it's not actually creating this eyebrow on the exterior side of our house. We want this to actually terminate right at the wall. So again, with that edge selected, I'm going to right click, properties. And again, that's the only edge selected. That's the only side I want to be modifying. I'm going to get rid of the overhang for just that particular edge. I'm going to say OK. And it's now removed that edge, so it does not intersect with our wall anymore. So when I look at that in our 3D view, we can see that it actually terminates right at the wall. And again, you can adjust this roof any way that you need to. So if you want to lower the slope or create a higher slope, you would select the lowest point edge of that surface, and you just go right click, properties, and now you can adjust the overhang, you can adjust the slope. Again, making those adjustments that you see fit for your roof design. I'm going to cancel this. And the next thing I want to talk about is creating a different type of roof feature, creating kind of like a little gable end over top of our roof here. So when I select this edge, we can see that there's only one arrow here. And if I was to convert this to be a gable, it would just make this a flat roof here. And I wouldn't be able to do, it wouldn't create the gable end that I'm looking for. So what I need to do is I need to take advantage of a tool called break. And I'm going to use the two columns here to act as my breaking point for this roof. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to select break. Once I move my mouse over my column, I get a circle with an X. And this is telling me that this is a snap point that I can use to create my break point. So I'm going to create my first break point here. And then while the roof is still selected, I'm going to right click again and create and then select break. So you can see that it's created two arrows for me. And as soon as I click here, it's going to create a third arrow. And this is the arrow that I actually want to modify. I'm going to select this edge and I'm going to deselect this one here. I am going to stretch this down, so as soon as I move my mouse over top of this arrow, I get my cursor that changes to look like 4 arrows, which is the move feature. And I'm just going to left click and hold my mouse button. I'm going to bring this down. I'm actually going to snap it to the edge of this column here. So this creates a little projection in our roof, and I can now, and you can see here it's actually created the 2 extra arrows for me. So if I wanted to change the slope of this gable end, I could do that here. So I would select these 2 edges and adjust the slope. But I'm focused on this front because I want this to be a gable. Again, with only that edge selected, I'm going to right click and select properties. And I'm going to change the roof shape from a hip to a gable and say OK. And it's now created a gable end right above my entry. And again, if I wanted to adjust the slope of these, I would just select these 2 arrows here, and I would be able to go in and say, I want this to be a 612 or an 812 or what have you. Again, you want to realize that when you make these adjustments, it's going to push back the valley of where that gable end ties in. So the bigger the slope you make, the further back it's going to push everything. So you really don't want this to interfere with your window above anyways. So leaving it at a 412 is probably beneficial here. So we're going to say OK. And then we look at this in our 3D front view. We can see that it's created that gable end over top of our main entryway. So that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to talk about with roofs. So we went through creating a roof by perimeter and then by picking points. We also touched on creating a dormer roof and then using the break tool to create a different type of roof design by adding in extra points and then modifying that one edge. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the questions section. If you have any questions at all pertaining to what we covered today, please just go ahead and type those in, and I will do my best to answer those for you. Okay, so I have one question here. I have 2 parallel parts of the house that have stick framed roofs. The center part of the house I want to put trusses over. I have had occasional success with picking the points for 3 separate roofs and getting the roofs to merge, but I'm unable to get it to merge again. How can I accomplish this? I have 2 parallel parts of the house. And part of the house I want to put trusses over. I have occasions. So you have 2. I'm just trying to figure out exactly what this roof shape is looking like here. So the 2 parallel parts, is the center part a gable from front to back, and the parallel parts are also front to back. If you actually have this model drawn, Kelly, this might be something that you want to send into our support department, and they'll be able to help you out with the file that you've created. I'm just trying to picture exactly what you want here. One section has 12-foot walls. One section is over a 4-car garage. Yeah, I would, just send that drawing in, and then we'll be able to see exactly what you're working with. I think that's the better option for that one. So again, I'll leave the question section open for a bit longer. That way, if you do have any questions pertaining to what we covered today, we can go ahead and touch on those. If you happen to have a question after the conclusion of the class, you can send that into our support department as well, and they'll be able to help you out with any roof questions that you have. And like I mentioned earlier, this class has been recorded, so it will be posted. And then I will also be sending out a PDF that covers everything that we've talked about today as well. All right, so I'll give it just another minute here. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and enter those in. All right, well, I want to thank everybody for attending the class today. Hopefully we're able to show you some new things that you haven't seen before and answered any questions that you may have had coming into the class. So again, you can look forward to a PDF being sent out that covers everything we've talked about today. And again, I want to thank everybody for attending, and I look forward to speaking with you all again very soon. Thank you very much, and have a great day.